So I can do a top 10 right now. I don't know if you're semi prepared to do one. I've already prepped one to give you some time. So what do you think about that?
Sure. I tried to prep it earlier, and I kind of got bogged down. I had a hard time doing it, so I'll probably use yours almost as a cheat sheet to do my own because I was having so much trouble with it.
My number 10 is my favorite. Y'all, these are so hard. Top 10, and again, I'm gonna keep saying this is what has made this season so fun. Top tens are so unbelievably hard. Um, so let's get into it. I'm gonna clap for the cut up. All right. So for me on top 10, number one, I've got Georgia, which is pretty obvious. I have some concerns about their offense, about what I saw today, but the defense is so good that it may not even matter the entire year. Number two, I've got Alabama. And what people are going to say is Ohio State, assuming they hold on, there's about a minute and a half left in this game. Assuming they hold on, they've got another ranked win or whatever. But after this game, Penn State's not going to be ranked. This is a home game that Penn State was very much in. And we just had this discussion, very much in and could have won this game. I think Alabama beats Penn State by probably about 17 points. It's not a fair transitive property thing. I'm just right now, I think Alabama's playing a little better than Ohio State. Number three, I do have Ohio State ahead of number four, Cincinnati. I think Ohio State would beat Cincinnati pretty handily, which is unfortunate because I think Cincinnati has kind of got a free and easy path to the playoffs, even though they're not really crushing their schedule, which I wanted to see. I thought after the Central Florida game, they had kind of turned the corner and we were going to see them really get some momentum. We haven't seen that. They struggled 7-point win with Navy, 31-12, but it was really uglier than that against Tulane today. So that's been a little disappointing, but they are still winning. I've got Michigan State at number 5, and this one is kind of academic because they play Ohio State. So that will really sort itself out. So it doesn't really matter where they're at, 3, 5. I think the win today was a really good win. So much so that I still have Michigan in my top 10. I know those two teams haven't really played anybody except each other, but I think that was a really good win. And I like them at 5. I'm really concerned for them at quarterback. Number 6, this is where people are going to laugh at me. And this is where I'm going to say in the comments, if you're going to laugh at me about this, you got to tell me who you'd put in your top 10 so I can laugh at yours as well. It's easy to pick on without understanding just how hard this is to do in this year. People are going to point out, because I've got Texas A&M at number 6, how flawed they are, how the losses they have, how they're bad or whatever. Tell me who you're going to put ahead of them that's good enough to beat Alabama, and then we'll talk. Number 7, I've got Oklahoma back in my top 10. I said, last week when I had them out, I was punishing them for the Kansas game. I still am kind of punishing them for that. They've got a lot of one-score wins against teams that are getting blown out by bad teams. And so that is still a concern. Texas Tech is rudderless at this point. They got murdered by Texas. They're not a good team, but they handle their business for once in a while. So I appreciated that. Number 8 is Oregon. And that could change at any moment. I haven't been hugely impressed with Oregon, but they do have the best win of the college football season, them or Texas A&M, depending on how you look at it. Number 9, I've got Michigan. I thought they played a great game today. It was a road game. They very well, if something here or there went their way, that could have ended up in a blowout because they could have changed how Michigan State had to play their game offensively, forced them to throw the ball a lot more. And it didn't happen. But I have them at number 9 and number 10. And this is where college football fans really need to pay attention because Cincinnati and Notre Dame are right there on the cusp of taking playoff slots. I've got Notre Dame at number 10, and it's hard to argue with at this point because if philosophically, if you say losing to elite teams isn't that bad, their only loss is to a top 5 team. And it was a really close game. Now, you may not think a lot about Cincinnati, but if you don't think a lot about them, then drop them even further. But right now, Notre Dame has one loss. It's against a top 5 team. They won today by double digits against North Carolina. They don't have anybody on their schedule other than Cincinnati to prove that they're a good team. But until they lose a game, I can't keep them out of the top 10 because everybody else is losing. Kentucky lost, Iowa lost. So I got to do something there. And that's what I did. All right, Josh, I'm going to watch some baseball, even though I'll probably interrupt you here or there and let you do your top 10.
Yeah, and like you, this is extremely difficult to do. And do you want to honestly, I think this year in particular has been really difficult because so many of the teams that you feel like are comfortably in the top 10 lose the week of. Like we have Kentucky in the top 10 last week, and they have a bad loss to I say bad loss to Mississippi State. Maybe Mississippi State's good. I do worry, and I'll say this at the onset, I do worry that we're punishing conferences for beating themselves up, and I want to be careful about that. The Mississippi State, Kentucky, you got like Arkansas beats Texas. The fact that they're all losing to each other doesn't necessarily mean they're all worse than teams in like the Big Ten, right? If we could go be it could literally be that if the 10 best teams in the country are in the SEC, okay? I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying it could be. That, they all go 500 against each other, and they all have in the season with 2 or 3 losses, and they can still be better than everybody else in college football. And that's just the regional nature and the difference in scheduling. But I have to assume that's not entirely true, and there weren't enough data points for me to overturn it. So I kind of end up with the list I'm about to roll through. Number 1, I have Georgia. I'm in the same boat as you. Georgia continues to win in dominant fashion. The defense is far and away the best in the country. The offense is very efficient. The running game's good. I'm not in love with the offense, but given the defense, I think their offense is like primarily because of the running game, something like a top 15, top 25 offense. It's about where it's at. But the defense is so far and away number 1, and the rest of the country is so far behind that I think it's enough. Enough to make him a clear number 1. My number 2, and I'm same as you, it's Alabama. The reality is they lost to Texas A&M. That seemed like a bad loss. I said at the time I didn't feel like A&M was going to finish unranked. I don't think they are going to finish unranked. Everybody, especially Oklahoma and Texas fans, really want to say A&M sucks. They don't. And it's kind of funny that the first
they do want to say that.
The first unranked loss of Saban's tenure may actually end up being one of the highest ranked teams with the highest final ranking that he's ever lost to. But we don't. What was it? South Carolina, maybe 2010. I'm not sure they even finished very highly ranked. But I think that's kind of a misnomer. Ohio State's number 3. They slip a little bit to me. Alabama goes up almost by default. Ohio State resurfaced a lot of the concerns I had for them early in the year. Give credit to Penn State, but still, that offense is not at the super elite level that Ohio State fans wanted to convince themselves of. Clearly, it can't just put up 40 points automatically. At the very least, it's possible to slow them down. I have Cincinnati number 4. I think you got to be impressive with what they're doing. Not only the undefeated, and I know they haven't won everything super convincingly, but they've won a lot of games convincingly. They did beat Indiana by double digits. They did beat Notre Dame by double digits. They did blow out UCF. The too late game was close for most of the game. That does give me concern, but they did end up pulling away in the game. And frankly, undefeated teams are rare enough. I feel like I got to put them high. I'll tell you one that's not on my list is Wake Forest, because they are not winning in dominant fashion. And frankly, Cincinnati's schedule is harder than Wake Forest's schedule, at least to this point. My number 5 is Oklahoma. Now, a lot of Oklahoma fans are going to be mad that I have Cincinnati ahead of them, but quite frankly, Oklahoma is climbing in my rankings. We've struggled to even put them in the top 10, but they're not there yet. I do think they've been a much better team since Caleb Williams took over. Rattler, I think he's a tremendously talented kid, but he clearly had the yips. He was holding them back. They're improving to what they need to be, and they're deserving of being in the top 5, in my opinion. Despite the fact that they struggled a lot earlier, they have started to produce well. This is where it starts to get hairy, right? Number 6 for me is Michigan State. I just don't have much reason to put anyone ahead of them. The Michigan win is a real win. I am not sold. I was the one that tweeted about this. I'll own it. Michigan and Michigan State were both undefeateds. The only Power 5 between them they had played with a winning record was Wisconsin. Everyone else, not even tied, they all had losing records. Every other P5 they played. So if you've got 2 P5s that are undefeated by default, necessarily one of them is going to win and be an undefeated P5. So Michigan State to me is still really sketchy. I didn't think their defense was impressive, especially pass defense. Personally, I think it's quite likely they're going to lose multiple games going forward. But the teams they may lose to, Ohio State's one, but I don't fault that at all. And maybe they lose to Penn State or somebody else. But given the what's out there, that's more than enough to be ranked number 6. Number 7 for me is Texas A&M. Same thing that you said, right? Mississippi State is turning out to be a hot or cold team, but a team that's good enough to beat people. The win against Alabama, in my mind, is the best win in college football. You can debate whether that's Oregon or theirs. They've looked pretty darn good the past few weeks. I think they're going to end up being a highly ranked team. I know they kind of played like crap early on. It's the inverse of Ole Miss, who started really strong and has now lost and have had to drop them out. I will tell you, drop them out completely after that loss. They're not going to finish the team they could have been. Oregon is my number 8. Again, people are going to mock 8, 9, 10, to your point. Try and find someone that's definitively better. You run out of teams that people would justify as being a top 10 team in recent years. There's just not that many without blemishes. And Oregon has not looked great, but that Ohio State win is a real win. And everyone else has a blemish. My number 9 is Notre Dame. Same conversation you had. Notre Dame taking care of business for the most part. If you believe Cincinnati is a good team, and I do believe it, then you have to sort of excuse it. And they've done well against a schedule that, again, I don't think Wake Forest would have the same record Notre Dame has with that schedule. And then my 10th is Michigan, again, for the same reasons as you. That was a hard-fought game. I'm not going to punish them that much relative to Michigan State when I'm not even sure they lose in a rematch. And so I do think, if you notice, not a lot of SEC teams in my top 10. I mean, you've got Georgia, you've got Alabama, you got Texas A&M. A&M is going to be controversial. I think there's a lot of SEC teams in that 11 to 20 range. I kind of worry a little bit that we're punishing the SEC, as I said, for having so many in that range that beat each other up. But, I guess 3 in the top 10 is still a lot.
And they're just. But Josh, think about this: like Ole Miss, they're hurt right now. They don't belong in the top 10. I could see them getting a bowl matchup where they murder them because they might get healthy and really come to play. Auburn lost to Penn State and they got blown out by Georgia. They're not a top 10 team. And these are some of the more top SEC teams. Kentucky was in our top 10. They got murdered by Mississippi State today. Mississippi State's not a top 10 team.